but its reporting on the judicial reforms is hysterical. And I also think it's counterproductive. If you want to oppose the reforms, and just to be clear, on balance, I'm probably unhappy myself with the reforms, you should come up with some alternative moderated plan which will appeal to a broad section of people and propose it. There's no point in screaming end of democracy. Israel just had a democratic election. No one is suggesting that the votes were rigged. We don't have a kind of Donald Trump situation where he's saying that it wasn't democratic. Everyone accepts this election was democratic. So what does it mean? Even if the judicial reforms do pass, so if they're not good, there'll be an election in 3 years and people will vote Netanyahu out. He's never shown any inclination to not hold elections. On the contrary, he loves elections. He keeps on winning them,
Yeah. I guess my question is, and you've done a great job in laying out the issue and the hysteria. What is this really about? Is it about judges and constitutional principles? Because I don't see much deep thinking from the sort of anti-Bibi resistance about that issue.
Yeah.
Or is it about who gets to run the country regardless of who wins elections?
Yeah, I think there are two things. One is what you've just said. They haven't won the election. So, I mean, I'm going to say something a bit controversial here, but many people, and I'm somewhat sympathetic with them, believe the entire corruption charges that were brought against Netanyahu 2 or 3 years back was also a kind of attempt to hound him out of office. They thought he'd step down. If they threatened charges, he'd step down. So they kept on threatening them, which is why at least 50% of Israelis think these charges are nonsense, and they're the kind of things that would never be brought in fact, I can say from Britain that Boris Johnson, the last Prime Minister, he did do exactly what Netanyahu is accused of doing, much worse. And no one's going to put him on trial or whatever for corruption. So, and I'm pretty sure that the Bidens and the Trumps and the Clintons have probably done some slightly more dubious thing than Netanyahu's ever done. No one's accusing Netanyahu.
You can count on that, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm being British understatement. I'm trying to say that no one's saying that Netanyahu's got a suitcases of cash under the bed or in the Cayman Islands or whatever. So it's this ongoing harassment to beat him. This ongoing harassment, including now, is because they're very, very angry that they haven't won the election. And it's a little bit like after the 2016 election, where Trump beat Hillary Clinton, there was rage. They're like, how dare you? How dare you beat our candidate? It's so obvious that our candidate ought to be the president, i.e. Hillary. And they just didn't want to admit that Trump won. For whatever reason, he won because he conducted a better campaign in the Midwest or whatever, or he had connected to voters somehow. He did not win because Vladimir Putin rigged the electoral process, but they just couldn't accept that he won. So they had to go after all these theories, this one and that one. So we see also in Israel something similar. And what I say to my friends here in Tel Aviv is I want Israel to have a strong centre-left party, a kind of social democratic party. So the obvious thing is 6 of these opposition parties, stretching probably from Gideon Saar, Gantz, Lapid, Lieberman, the Labour Party and Meretz, should be one party. That party has less differences than there are within the American Democratic Party or the British Labour Party or the British Conservative Party or any other, the Social Democrats in Germany. It should be one party. They should have one leader. They should have a manifesto of the kind we have in Britain, where they outline policies like transport. Anyone who's been to Israel recently knows there are endless traffic jams and all kinds of congestion. Israel needs a proper transport policy. It needs a better education policy. So they should first come together, unite as a party, stop screaming hysteria, put an attractive, good candidate, and then make themselves electable. Because even if they push Netanyahu out of office, you know what? They won't win the next election. The right's going to win it again because the left are so divided. So one of the reasons, as you mentioned, is the is they're just bitter and angry that they can't get their own house in order to put on a proper party to beat Netanyahu. That's one thing. Another thing is they probably kind of regret that Israel doesn't have term limits. And I too think Israel should have term limits.